write about. Trying to figure out what it's all about. Existentialist, am I worth anything or just discount? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Spending time all alone, sending my songs to the phone, dreaming of a better home while focused on trying to hone this craft, witchcraft. Hold the brujas, let this last.
I don't know if the earth is painted blue.
That was the great sounds of Watson with Outside on WNHHLP 103.5 FM New Haven. Myself, Prestige, with my partner in crime, Long Island raised, Elm City made, E.Z. Bluez is in the building. Easy Bluez, you are better with introductions more than me. Who do we have with us today on Behind the Brand?
Ladies and gentlemen, they say fortune favors the bold, but fortune only favors the bold when you don't make other people uncomfortable. And that is the thing that they forget to tell you. That is the thing, because it's hard when you're bold. It's hard when you're bold and you stand for something. I'm going to tell you a quick little story real quick. This weekend, I sat with my two youngest and we watched Just Mercy. And we watched the entire thing all the way through. And these young men felt massively uncomfortable. These young men came up with questions and wanted to know why. And they wanted to get up and walk away from the movie several times. But we sat in that moment. And I said, look, you feel a little uncomfortable right now. Imagine living in that uncomfortability. Imagine every day having to be that uncomfortable. We can take an hour and a half of our time and sit and try to relate to that uncomfortability, because that's what's going to make us all better. But imagine having to live in that. And having to live with that, you become unapologetic. Unapologetic for who you are, what you stand for, and the good fight that you are there. And it is a blessing and an honor to stand with two people who are unapologetically radical. It is good to stand shoulder to shoulder with them, and it is good to watch them lead, because there is times when I know I need to just shush. So right now, I want you to put your hands together, not if you're driving. If you're driving, keep your hands at 10 and 2, so we don't want any accidents. Mentally, put your hands together for the amazing Tiffany Williams and Adriane Jefferson. Thank you guys so much for being here. Welcome.
Thank you for having us. It's a pleasure to be back.
That was an amazing introduction.
It was. I was like, he said stupid intros. He like killed that intro.
Thank you. It's I like doing them. It's a thing. It's kind of my shtick right now. But it also, you know, I'm a big fan. I don't like to waste words as much as I love to talk. And it's important. And it's important that people really have that understanding, because there's a whole bunch of people that the changes that are happening in life are making them feel uncomfortable because it is shaking up their status quo. And that's when feelings start to become, you know, in the game. And no matter what, no matter how, you know, far in advance we get, we can't tell other people how to feel, how not to feel. What we can try to do is understand where those feelings come from. And what I like to say, it's the journey of the original hurt. You know, because when you can get to that understanding, it's a beautiful thing. And that is a lot of where the work came from. Like, Adriane, you were here about a year ago, and that was like right before the first Unapologetically Radical. But you also came into New Haven just as you know, starting up everything, the pandemic hits and all these different things go through. And from the conversations you and I had, I want to give you flowers right now, because I've had conversations with other people that are dealing within the mechanism of a governmental machine, and they say all the things that you want to hear, but they don't do anything about it. And you don't do that. Every conversation that we've had, I have actually seen you go actively into the community and make changes. You know, you guys were able to increase a little bit of budget to the local artists that were out there for some of the Zoom aspects that were going on. So you were literally taking care of, you know, when your administration first came through, one of my biggest things was I want to see representation for the local artist community of New Haven. And not only did you talk to me for hours on the phone planning that, but then you came on our show last year, and now you're back again this year. So I want to give you your flowers for that, and I want to thank you.
I appreciate that so much. It definitely has been a journey. I'm one of those type of people who, if I say something, then I really mean it. Like I operate in purpose. And I think that we discussed this the last time that I was here, and that will like always kind of just be consistent with me. It's just that I'm only going to do something if it aligns with purpose, if it's about impacting people in a way that really is going to be responsive to their needs. And I'm really glad that I was able to be put in a position that I felt like aligns with that type of initiative. So like I take like full credit when it comes to just walking in purpose, but everything else is really about listening to the community, right? And working with the community. I realized that you can't come in and like this, I reject the notion of coming in and doing for community. I uplift the notion of coming in and doing with community in partnership, shared power. A lot of times we think we know what's best, even like, because we have our own experiences. I have my own experiences as a Black Native woman. I can come in and say, this is what I think needs to be done. But where would that really get us? We have to listen to what the community is telling us, right? And I think it has to always come from a place of being humble. A lot of people don't realize when you are in leadership positions, it is not about being in power. It is about empowering others or using your power to empower people around you. So I try to operate through that mode. And I appreciate your words. They really mean a lot to me.
Well, it's seen. It is definitely seen. But for the listening audience who doesn't know, Tiffany Williams, welcome to the show. Why don't you give a little bit of background, who you are, why you're here, and how awesome this entire experience, is unapologetically radical.
Here we go, me trying to explain what I do and who I am. It's always a struggle. So my name is Tiffany, and I'm a creative consultant, basically just a creative. I became a full-time creative at the beginning of the pandemic, and I was blessed to come on board with Adriane and create programs and events, and it's taken off, and it's just been a blessing. So I'm really thankful. So let me just give her flowers also, because she's definitely changed my life in so many ways. I mean, when we talk about arts and culture, I don't think that a lot of people think that they can have careers in arts and culture, because they don't really teach that to us in school. And to be able to be in that environment, knowing that this is something that I can make a career out of, has really done many things for my life right now.
That's
Can
awesome.
I add, Tiffany, I'm so sorry. I just want to add real quick, because Tiffany has an amazing story in which, it's her story to share, but I will just say this. Tiffany really took a risk, as many entrepreneurs do, creative entrepreneurs included in that. And she decided where she was probably, 2 years ago, maybe 2.5 years ago,
right before
the pandemic, she decided it was not where she was needing to be. It was not aligned to her purpose. And she literally just decided to walk away. And she walked away with very little plan. I think she walked away just knowing that wasn't it, right? And she walked away and she dived right into being a creative entrepreneur. She dived into all of the things that she wants to do. And she's really manifested this kind of like this career that is now around her. That's like full credit to her walking away. And so like, I encourage, now I'm not saying to everyone out there, just walk away from a job, you got bills and stuff like that. Disclaimer. But I will say it's a really, really amazing story and amazing model to follow when you're not, life is short. Life is very short. We have to walk in alignment to our purpose. And she was bold enough to walk in alignment to her purpose. And I feel like artists do that all of the time. And we don't give them their flowers for the sacrifices that they make, for the risks that they make. And Tiffany is just a really good example of that.
Oh, thank you.
That's awesome. And I really love the fact that you guys brought that up, that it's not something that's taught in school. And really from a sociological element, it really should be. Because if you look back throughout all of history, when arts thrives and when culture is thriving, then economy thrives.
That's right.
Then growth thrives. Then education thrives. It really does come from that aspect. I mean, being an artist myself, obviously I'm massively defensive about this, but, sans that, it was the bards that were on the corner that were initially singing what was going on in the town, was telling you that taxes were going to be raised. They were what Prestige and I are doing right now, being the news from that aspect. And it came from an arts point of view, and arts can go back so far as, looking at the classical music that was composed for churches, and it all had to be in a major key because it was for worship and it needed to sound happy. So it really is that underlining theme, but we got into this weird society aspect of, you can only make money in the fields that are safer. And there's a lot to say for taking those risks. There's a lot to say for it. I mean, one of the greatest hitters of all time, Mr. October, had for the longest time had the most amount of home runs. But if you also look at it, he had the most amount of strikeouts because he swung at everything. So that's just something you might want to take, and those losses are important.
I love what you said about, everything that you just said, but really about the economy. Like, arts and culture is so important to cities and building cities. Where you see housing, where you see new businesses, where you see people moving is usually centered around arts and culture, because people want to live in a thriving environment where arts and culture is prevalent. That is a fact. And so it's so interesting because people don't realize how tied in it is to economics. Connecticut alone is a $9.3 billion industry, a creative arts workforce industry. And a lot of people don't know. And so I think we just have to do better when it comes to like education and who has access to that information or who has access to these opportunities. Because Connecticut actually is thriving in the creative economy, but there's just certain communities who are not seeing that. And that's because the opportunities are not there. So I think we just have a lot of work to do, which is why like we have, Tiffany and myself and other people who work in the department, we are just being unapologetic, like no pun intended, about the work that needs to be done when it needs to be done. Like, we don't know how long we will be here, right? We don't know how long, this will last. And so we want to make sure we're creating things that are sustainable and meaningful to people right now.
That's awesome. That is amazing. It's so true. And also from the artist point of view, you have to look at success differently as well. Success isn't the MTV Cribs multi-million-dollar, mansion type of thing. Success is being able to support yourself, your family, doing what you love to do, doing what you were put on this earth to do. And whether that means you're renting an apartment for the rest of your life or you're buying, a 3-bedroom house, you're still able to support your family. You're still able to live the life that you want for your family to move forward. And that is really the truest of success stories. And that's incredible. And I love that story. And I look forward to one day sitting down and really getting into that story, Tiffany, because I'm intrigued. You're a great hype person. I'm saying right now, like, I'm ready. I'm ready to buy the movie ticket. Like, let's go. Like, giddy up.
Listen, don't get me started, because I will take an idea and I will run with it.
Well, let's get a little bit into that creative journey, though. When did you truly realize that you were a creative?
I think I've always known that I was a creative. I had been working in the hospital field for, I want to say maybe 10 years. And I was just doing little things like being a patient representative. But I always wanted to do more. When it came to like marketing events that we had going on, I knew that I wanted to do more with that. And then I started getting on my mental health journey, and I was getting sick from being at work, in a sense that I wasn't happy, it wasn't fulfilling. I was getting depressed. I ended up like having to take time off of work, and I really had to sit with myself and say, why does this keep happening? And then I noticed that, you know what, let me start putting on some wellness events, because if I put on a wellness event for myself and maybe invite a couple of other people, maybe it'll catch on. Maybe this is something that we all need. So I started doing wellness events for women, which turned into mental health panels for any and everyone who wanted to come. And I started to notice that, I was putting my own money into it. I wasn't doing it for, a profit. I just really wanted to help people. And I saw that people needed that help. And then I would get messages saying how, amazing it was and how they needed it. So that I think, really launch my creative consulting career.
That's incredible. And the mental health journey is one that really has come more to the forefront through the pandemic and having everybody forced to slow down. They've started to realize that their self-worth is more important than the corporate check. And I appreciate it because I felt like that forever. But that, it's one of the reasons why my resume is extremely long, and maybe I have one too many things on there. Maybe, just maybe. But it happens. To me, it's always a matter of, I'm going to be here until it's no longer fun. And I'm going to do this until, it hits that point where it now adds to my sorrow instead of my happiness. But I've also been fortunate enough to do that, and not fortunate enough as per like I've had money or anything like that, just fortunate enough to just care just a little less than everybody else. I've never, when you grow up the way that certain people have grown up, I never had to worry about having a chain. I've never had to, because it was going to get stolen from you anyway. So, whatever money I had just went right back into sustaining, a life and learning to live a life, a champagne life on a beer budget, really became what it was. One of the reasons why I've gotten tattooed so much, because you can't take that from me. All of my tattoos are an accomplishment, that I have, done in life, whether it be graduating basic training, the birth of my children.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That's one of the most, I appreciate that. But now, enough about that. Let's
about
get
that. Easy.
Into...
We're on WNHHLP 103.5 FM New Haven. Myself, Prestige, and my partner in crime, Long Island Rays, Elm City Made. Easy Bluez is in the building. We got the great Adriane Jefferson with us on Behind the Brand, and the awesome Tiffany Williams is on Behind the Brand too, who is writing her own story, which is really awesome to hear. I'm loving being a fly on the wall in this conversation. So Easy Bluez, continue with the show.
Let's talk about this incredible event that you have coming up, I believe, in 2 weeks' time, a week from this coming Saturday, kind of thing.
Yes, 2 weeks. Oh my gosh.
So
let's flown.
Yeah, no, it definitely has. But let's talk a little bit about that. Let's get the word out there and get some more people to come sit in the Zoom, or however you guys are doing it. This is your car. So let's tell, what is it to be unapologetically radical, and why is it important?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think so. I'll start with just kind of giving some background on why we're doing this conference, and then I'll pass it to Tiffany to talk about what's happening for this year and the logistics and why we're doing it this way. But if let's go back. Let's kind of go back to the unfortunate murder of George Floyd, right? And Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor, and countless amount of other names that we don't have enough time in the day to name all of the Black and brown bodies that we have seen be victims to police brutality or some other form of violence. And so what we saw was outrage around the George Floyd situation, rightfully so. It is an outrageous situation. But we started to hear from people we usually would not hear from, and everybody wanted to stand up, just for humanity and release solidarity statements. Solidarity statements are great, but they're not good if there's no action behind them. And so we immediately were like, okay, this is like a lot. Like, everyone is releasing these statements, but what is their action plan and what is going to be next? And so we really wanted to, number one, hold ourselves accountable as well, because we also, released, a solidarity statement, but we also, in our role in the city as a Department of Cultural Affairs, which really our role is to help shepherd arts and culture here, including arts organizations and artists. But really, we wanted to work with these arts organizations who were releasing these statements to say, okay, well, what is your plan? And if you don't have a plan and you're saying you want to be an anti-racist arts organization, here is a roadmap for you. So we began a program called the Arts for Anti-Racism Pledge Program. We had a little over 40-something arts organizations, mostly in New Haven, but not only exclusively in New Haven, who who took the pledge. And the pledge that they were taking is to really look internally at how they can be an anti-racist arts organization. What does your board makeup look like? What does your leadership model look like? What is your policies and your practices that are either, welcoming people or keeping people out? And how are we adjusting to make sure that you really are reflecting a shared value of being anti-racist? So out of that, right, we were thinking about programs and what we wanted to do. And a thought that came to us was a conference. We wanted to have, really at first it was like we wanted to have an unconference. An unconference challenges the norms of everything that a conference actually is. So we were like, we don't really want it to just be a conference. We want it to be something that really pushes and extends and stretches people to really be like anti-racist and to listen, to heal, to reconcile with the wrongs that have been done to Black and brown people. And so we came up with a conference called Unapologetically Radical. And so our last conference was last year. And we knew that what we wanted to do, because what I realized is with conferences or anything, like I don't want to create something that caters, right? Like, I think it's one thing, like we want to encourage people to dive into the work. We don't want to hold your hand because you really should be also wanting to do this work from an authentic place. And so we had to kind of take a step back on like, who are we serving and how do we serve them and say, no, we want this to be a space for a safe space for Black and brown people, for hip hop, for the hip hop community, for artists and for activists. And now other people who want to learn about what it really means to be anti-racist, to challenge the norms, you can come and immerse yourself in the culture of that, but we're not going to cater that to you, right? And so that is the kind of space we created. We intentionally designed this to be something that merges with hip hop, and Tiffany will break that down a little bit later, but it really is about where hip hop meets social change, where it meets activism, where pop culture meets activism, and what role, we ask ourselves questions all the time. What role does hip hop play in this movement? Does it play a role? Should artists be on the forefront? Should they not? And we start to have these really, really challenging conversations. And this year we're taking it further and we're really going beyond that and just talking with mostly the hip hop community around critical race theory and buying back your block and all of these issues that plague the Black and brown community. So with that said, though, that's kind of like the overall gist, giving it context, but I'm going to pass it on to Tiffany to talk a little bit more about, the creativity behind it and what we're going to be doing this year.
Yeah, so when you think about, so ultimately we didn't want it to be a conference. So if you look at how the show is structured, it's almost structured in a way as if it's a concert. A couple of things that bring people together is always arts, it's always culture and music. Like we wait for your favorite artist for their track list to drop, and then you want to see what features it has on it. So that was one of the elements that we had to it. And even when you look at the track list that we have for this year's conference, it mimics Nipsey Hussle's The Marathon. If you see it, it mimics it a little bit, especially dating back to, when Chuck Berry had first came out and everyone's going to his concerts and, they kind of pushed through the line and everyone merged together. This is what we wanted to do. We wanted everyone to kind of merge together and understand what was going on in a way that it wasn't just for Black and brown people, but it was to also help and educate, our allies.
It's amazing. And I love the fact that, you're based it off of a Nipsey Hussle record because of everything that he's done for community building. It was an honor and a privilege to watch that rise and to see how even after, leaving the earth, the impact is still there and it still echoes. And it's great to see, being a music historian that I am, to see Nipsey take Sam Cooke's dream and make it a reality is gorgeous. And I just warms my heart a little bit. Absolutely warms my heart a little bit.
That's what we want to do.
Now, as per the different artists and stuff there, how did you reach out? Who do we have? Because we know some people.
Yes.
We know lots of people.
It's a good mix of folks. So we always try to make sure, number one, that New Haven is mostly reflected in the lineup. So I will say that New Haven artists, all of the people on the panel get paid. So this is a paid opportunity. It's another way that we're embellishing workforce. We pay everybody for anything that they do, to be honest, when they come to us. If you're an artist, if you're a resident, you get paid through our office. So just disclaimer, right? But as far as like the lineup itself, we definitely have some amazing New Haven people. So we have Carrie Ellerton. Many of you may know Carrie from the activism work and the organizing work that Carrie has done throughout New Haven. Very, very well known for really just I think she is the example of being a radical change maker and being very unapologetic about what she is trying to accomplish for people and centering people community needs. We have Aaron Rodgers, who is a Grammy-nominated producer from out of New Haven, who actually came back and has started an academy called the Breed Academy, nonprofit arts organization to teach young people arts and entertainment and introduce them to the workforce through training, professional development, and workforce placement. We have Frank Brady, who is also from New Haven, who is a spoken word hip hop artist, poet, speaker. I mean, I'm sure I don't have the list in front of me, but these are the like amazing folks that we have. Tiffany, who I know I'm missing so many people. Who else am I missing?
Who else do we have? We have Sola. Who's the founder of Black Haven. You probably heard her around. She does a lot in the community. We have JR, who is a real estate agent. He has helped so many people. He's really invested in making sure that he educates Black and brown people about, buying back blocks and being homeowners. So that was really important for us to have.
It's so true. And I kind of want to sit in that for a moment. The importance of, and what exactly is, because there's some people going, what is it? It's a nifty catchphrase, but what does buy back your block really mean? So let's talk to those people right now. And let's tell them why it is so important and what really it is to buy back your block.
Well, what we're talking about here is anti-gentrification, right? And claiming back, first of all, if we want to be really technical, none of the land that's here belongs to us. It belongs to the Native people, okay? So we're addressing that. Number two, when we're talking about who's had opportunities for home ownership, if you look at what happened with redlining, I really recommend that people buy the book, The Color of Law. If you don't do anything else and don't read anything else, read The Color of Law because it addresses redlining. Redlining is really important when it comes to understand home ownership and how Black people did not have access to loans. Matter of fact, they were barred from certain communities in order to acquire home ownership. And when they did move into certain neighborhoods, white flight occurred and white people literally left that neighborhood, therefore deeming it an impoverished neighborhood. So there's a lot that goes into that, but pretty much Black people were not able to get loans. And actually there are still certain things written in the deeds where Black people cannot acquire certain properties. So what we're doing is addressing that and educating people about that, because a lot of people don't know. They're just living in it and they don't realize that it's a product of redlining. Even where the bridges come into play, like a bridge and highways where they're created, they were created as a divide in the intersection to separate neighborhoods on purpose. So the government, the United States government, intentionally segregated neighborhoods. And what happened with that was the housing, was education, where our kids go to school or don't go to school, and also the environment, pollution, certain, what do you call it with this? Oh my God, what is the word? Well, like pollution farms, but they're not called that, is another word. But where those would be located, that is where it would be closest to Black and brown neighborhoods. So what we're talking about is that, right? And so now what we're trying to do is we're trying to educate our people into what has happened, but where we are now. And saying you can acquire land, you should be a homeowner, because when you do that, you're investing in generational, transformational wealth for your family for years to come. And if you're able to invest in wealth, guess what? Now you have equity. If you have equity, now you could pay to send your kids to school. Right. And these are things that Black and brown people haven't been able to do consistently, as a unit for years. And so we're challenging that. We're educating people on that. We're saying here are the resources.
No, that's awesome. And just for those at home, all of those amazing TikTok videos or YouTube videos of watching those big trucks get stuck under those overpasses, that stems from exactly what you were talking about. I remember, I can only speak of it on Long Island because that's where I grew up. But I remember my grandfather telling me when the northern and southern state parkways were the only transportation on Long Island, their bridges, were made smaller because they didn't want the buses to go out further on the island. They wanted to keep city people in the city, and only those that were more affluent were able to go. And the further out you went on the island, the further, the income was. And this was something, my grandfather bought his house in, I believe, had it built in 1962. So, he was, born and raised in New York City, and then went to Long Island, born in 1929. He saw it all, when Long Island was literally just a land for potato farming and different things there, and then watched it grow into the suburban aspect that it became. And it's because of those division. And there's a lot of people that have no idea that they were raised in that type of environment.
Exactly.
One of the things that joining the military, I saw a bunch of 18-year-old kids come in and never see anyone any different than themselves. And they had to live with that, that culture shock, the initial culture shock of basic training, the initial culture shock of taking orders from somebody that, you were programmed, because that's really what it is, programming. You were programmed that they are less than. And now you have to take a direct order from them, and to watch that, literally psychologically be broken down completely. That's one of the reasons why when I was able to move from Long Island with my children, I moved to New Haven, because of how multicultural it was.
Yes.
Because within a 10 to 15 block radius, there's 4 mosques, 15 churches, and 2 synagogues, because it's that important. And I don't ever want my children to have to deal with that cultural shock and the devastation of realizing that what, you were raised on was 100% a lie and wrong. And that's really what it breaks down to.
And actually that ties in nicely. That ties in nicely to our other topic, which is critical race theory. Tiffany, do you want to explain a little bit about that one?
Critical race theory? Yeah, sure, I'll do it. So critical race theory is really just a conversation to dive into preserving Black and Brown stories, things that should be taught. Like when you think about when we were younger, we sat in the classroom and we saw the movie Roots. No one really explained to us what that would feel like afterwards. They didn't say, hey, just a disclaimer, this is going to be very traumatic. We want you to know that if you want to come to us afterwards, like, this is what we can talk about. They didn't tell us anything else. They told us about Martin Luther King. There wasn't very, Rosa Parks maybe, but there's so many other people like Marcus Garvey. There's so many other artists that we should have known about, especially when you think about New Haven's history. William Lansing, a lot of people don't know that he was one of the first entrepreneurs in New Haven, a Black man. And these are the things that we want to push for when our kids are being educated in school, because it's a lot of lost history.
No, it's really like that's resounding. And again, for those people who are trying to follow along at home, I'll give it a little I'll give it a little bit of context for my palm-colored brethren. Black Panther, huge movie. Again, I have young children. And that Halloween, they're like, oh, we want to be Black Panther. We want to be Black Panther. My children look like me, like completely. Just put a beard on them, and they're my clones. So I had to engage in that conversation of, well, you have a bunch of superheroes that look like you and that are a representation of you. You can be any one of those. Your friend really only has in a mass representation Black Panther. So why don't we let your friend, have Black Panther and celebrate that Black Panther on Halloween, and you can be Thor. You can be Captain America. You can be all of these other things because that's your representation. And let's hold on to that. It was an incredible conversation to have, and it was great that they picked up on it. It was great that it wasn't just dad's being mean, So it's been a blessing to sit in that type of aspect.
What you just described too is like it's equity. Like when we try to explain what equity is, that's kind of what I feel like you're getting at, right? We're not necessarily talking about equality because everything has not been equal. So if everything has not been equal for a long time, now you have to hire the level playing field for those who have not had access so that they can be on the playing field with everyone else. That means that you have to know, I think for our allies and for, white people who are allies, when you step back, sometimes that you have to step back so that others can move forward, especially when we're just trying to catch up, right? That's it. We're not trying to take from you. We're not saying we can't all share together, but we have to catch up. And so that's what equity looks like. I seen this quote the other day when I was scrolling through Instagram, and I thought it was so great. And they were saying something along the lines of like, the problem is that we have taught slavery as the history of Black people and not slavery as the history of white people. And that really was resounding to me. It was like striking to me because imagine, and I think it ties into critical race theory, but imagine where we would be when it comes to accountability and when it comes to reconciling if that was the history that was also taught to white people as well. And this is very controversial. I know critical race theory is something that's in the news. Legislators are fighting over it. You look at what happened in the state of Texas and what they were actually able to do, unfortunately, with keeping critical race theory out of schools. So I know it's controversial. I know that we know that not everyone is going to agree, but really for us, we want to hear from our panel about how they feel about critical race theory. So we're not pushing, any idea or concept on anyone.
Definitely want to hear it on WNHHLP 103.5 FM New Haven. Myself, Prestige, and my partner in crime, Long Island Rays, Elm City made, Bluez in the building. Behind the brand with the great Adriane, Jefferson, and Tiffany Williams. Go right ahead, Easy Bluez.
Well, no, it's so important, and that's kind of brings back to the intro, right? Where we talk about being bold is how you're going to be successful. But you're also going to ruffle some feathers. And because when someone else is being bold, you make other people feel uncomfortable. And no one really wants to feel uncomfortable because feeling uncomfortable is uncomfortable.
It's uncomfortable.
No one wants to be uncomfortable, but it's necessary. There's I go to Elm City Vineyard. I love the church and everything. But it's considered like what's called a big tent church, as per as long as you have an 80-20 aspect. 80% of the time you feel comfortable. 20% of the time you don't feel comfortable. But you have to understand that 20% belongs to someone else's 80% of comfortability. And that's extremely important. And I think I hope upon hope that more people try to get to that point of understanding the person on the other side point of original hurt. I talk about it a lot. I really do find that, because when you can trace it back, this person's, why they're pushing so hard against critical race theory being taught, it's because anytime they had an opinion in their household, it was beaten out of them, and that stems from, their parent being grown up in that same type of aspect and so forth and so on. So it becomes this generational programming to constantly move forward. And it is because of, a lot of people don't want to take accountability for their own failures. So, and they need to feel important and they need to feel special. And, when they say, I wish to have the confidence of a mediocre white man. Because it really, and I'm saying it so people can be mad at me. It's okay. I'm used to people being mad at me. That's fine. I don't say things to be liked all the time. But it really is that aspect of, that everyone is so concerned with their take and, want to make sure that they have to protect their droplings. They have to protect that bowl of gruel that was given to little Oliver. And instead of understanding that with a little bit of bread that you can break off, everyone can dip into that gruel.
Exactly.
And everyone can sustain to that next meal. It isn't about the I. We are our egos, and we are fed our egos by a very huge corporate structure. And, I can get into all that kind of nonsense moving forward and whatnot. But, it really is to push us in a divide dealing with ego alone, because, a lot of people don't want to admit that they are this far because of their own choices. And again, that is the more the people who are palm colored like myself. I'm not, I'm not employed right now because people are taking, my job. No, you didn't make yourself marketable enough. You didn't invest enough in yourself. You didn't fill out your best application. You didn't show up, in that best aspect. You told the person at the interview that, you liked getting out of work and getting hammered every single night. You made those mistakes. It wasn't because other people were there to take that job. You gave that job to someone else because you weren't as marketable as you were supposed to be.
Right.
I'm off my soapbox.
But go ahead, Tiff.
I want to be clear about just a couple of things is that it's uncomfortable for all of us. And I think the reason why critical race theory is important is because we often sometimes will get the chance to watch films and movies and documentaries for the first time as Black and brown people. And it's very traumatic. So think about if we were able to learn this stuff in school and we were able to deal with it better as we were adults. I recently just watched Women of the Movement on Hulu with Emmett Till. And I've heard people say that they had to actually text the phone number. And I thought to myself, wow, if we were taught these things when we were younger, we wouldn't feel the way that we felt towards other people, towards ourselves. So I just want everyone to know that it's traumatic for all of us. I know that it's making allies uncomfortable, but it's making us uncomfortable as well to know that these things happened.
And you know what, Tiffany, that's a really great point. I actually hadn't even thought about it from that perspective. And to further that point, some other people are arguing, not even arguing, but they have another view on critical race theory, which is like, yes, teach critical race theory, but let's start back to like Africa. Like, let's go back to where our ancestors, wherever it is, our Black ancestors derive from, and let's teach that story. Because to Tiffany's point, we don't know a lot of stories, and not just the traumatic stories, but the stories of joy, the stories where we should be proud of our history. There's so much to be proud of. The problem is that we can't point, so many Black people cannot point back to the origin of where they are from. We can't point back to that tribe in Africa. I mean, now we can do like the DNA ancestry test, but even then we don't really know our people, and it is, I believe that many of us are from, kings and queens and villages where, our ancestors were, like royalty. And imagine if young people knew this, to Tiffany's point, from little on, how much pride they would have with who they are. You are more than just the environment and the systems that have been created around you, but you can't see that if you don't know your history. And we're talking about beyond US history. And I thought that was a really good point. Again, a lot of people are saying different things about critical race theory, and even if they're in favor of it, it's different perspectives. And that one really resonated with me personally. It's just kind of like, because it's true, we can't point back. And that's the difference when you are ripped from a place that you are from, right? And that's, a lot of people like to say, it's really difficult for me when we're comparing what has happened to enslaved Africans who are, the ancestors of African Americans with other people who have maybe immigrated here. And some who have fled because they needed to, flee. But I'm talking about it's a different story when you are ripped and you have no choice. You are just taken. It is a different story. We have to address that. We have to acknowledge that, as well as acknowledging what has happened to people who have had to immigrate here. And we have to start to tell these stories, but we also have to differentiate what is happening what has happened to Black people.
No, definitely. I really do think that, especially in schools, that you need to tell that whole story. You know, the African American community story didn't start with slavery. And I think, you know, for so long that has been the starting talking point. And that's, I mean, I'm getting emotional. But it's heart-wrenching. It's heart-wrenching to think, you know, that became almost like the second Big Bang. Unfortunately, we are also now running low on time. This has been an absolutely amazing conversation. You guys are incredible. I love having you guys on. We're definitely going to be doing this more. And Tiffany, we'll probably have you on separately now, because I really want to hear your story. I really, really do. But right now, we want to give this time 100% to the both of you. To how can people get in touch with you? How can they get involved with being unapologetically radical? And yeah, let's dance.
Well, I would say just Instagram is always a good way to get me. My tag is Adriane V. Jefferson, or just, you know, you can look me up on City of New Haven's website and you'll see my email and you can send me an email. I'm very, very, very responsive to emails. And I would just say, you know, Unapologetically Radical is coming. Please sign up. Tamika D. Mallory, social change movement strategist, will be our keynote speaker. And so y'all don't want to miss out. Tiffany?
Yeah, I just want to reiterate that. I mean, you can find me on Instagram at TYPHANAE, and we're excited to have Tamika D. Mallory. We actually did a poll to see who everyone wanted, and they picked Tamika. So I hope that you guys will come. The RSVP is unapologeticallyradical.splashthat.com. It's free, and it's going to be an amazing event. We have a DJ. We have everything going on.
It's going to be like watching TV. Just get your popcorn and just watch, and get your notebook and, you know, journal as it's going on.
That's amazing. Thank you guys so much for everything that you do. Thank you for being, you know, amazing to the city that I love to call home. Thank you for following through with the words that you speak, and being more than just I guess figureheads is the way to speak, is the way to say it. It has been an honor and a privilege. I love to see the growth, and I love to see everything that you've done for this incredible city. And I cannot wait to see what the next chapter has to offer. Prestige, you want to, anything you want to throw in there?
Anything I want to throw in there? It's great to learn right here on Behind the Brand. Adriane, I'd love to get you on again separately. Tiffany, we'd love to get you on separately. There's more to learn from both of you. Incredible minds. Thank you so much for being part of the broadcast.
Thank you guys. Thank you.
WNHH LP 103.5 FM New Haven. Behind the Brand, myself, Prestige, and Easy Bluez.
Wondering what to write about, trying to figure out what it's all about. Existentialist, am I worth anything or just a scout? I don't know. Spending time all alone, sending my songs through the phone, dreaming of a better home, while focused on trying to hone this craft, witchcraft. I hope the brujas let this last.
I don't know if the earth is painted blue. I don't know if that's really you. I wanna go outside. Wanna go outside.
So many folks I've had to ghost. Negative ones the most. The seconds wasted. Never returned. I'm spaceship dreaming of landing home. I'm not alone. Even